Have you ever found yourself staring endlessly at a blank screen, entirely paralyzed by the sudden, chilling silence of a man who was perfectly communicative just hours before? Society often casually dismisses this behavior, assuring you that he simply needs space or is just being a typical man. But I am here to tell you that this is a dangerous, fundamentally flawed assumption. There is a profound, terrifying difference between a man taking a natural step back to breathe and a man who deliberately weaponizes his absence to systematically break your spirit. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the incredibly dark, manipulative tactic known as the silent treatment. We will explore the precise anatomy of this emotional extortion, how to counter it with the sovereign void, and the exact chilling method to turn his greatest weapon into his ultimate downfall. If you are entirely exhausted from apologizing for things you haven't even done just to restore the peace, you must drop absolutely everything and listen to me closely. Welcome to Destiny's Decree. In our previous discussions, we explored the biological necessity of a man occasionally pulling away, the natural stretching of the emotional rubber band. However, as a high-value woman, you must become incredibly astute at distinguishing between a healthy need for temporary autonomy and a malicious, highly calculated psychological attack. When a covert manipulator employs the silent treatment, he is categorically not retreating to his emotional cave to quietly recharge his masculine energy. Instead, he is deliberately erecting an impenetrable wall of ice specifically designed to freeze you out and plunge you into a state of absolute manufactured chaos. The anatomy of this specific punishment is remarkably insidious, my dear. It almost always follows a rather minor disagreement, a perfectly reasonable boundary you gracefully asserted, or even a simple moment where you refuse to yield to his precise expectations. Rather than engaging in mature, emotionally intelligent communication to resolve the friction, he immediately reaches for the coward's ultimate weapon. He abruptly, aggressively withdraws his presence, his affection, and his words, leaving you entirely stranded in a terrifying, echoing silence. He effectively transforms the entire relationship into a silent hostage situation, where your peace of mind is the exact ransom he intends to collect. You must deeply understand that this is never a passive reaction. It is an incredibly aggressive, hostile maneuver masquerading as absence. By completely removing himself from the equation, he forces you to shoulder the entire emotional burden of the conflict entirely on your own. He knows precisely how deeply this sudden, agonizing void will unsettle a caring, empathetic woman. He is actively establishing a deeply toxic hierarchy, attempting to prove that he holds the absolute monopoly on communication and connection, which perfectly sets the stage for a rather sinister form of emotional leverage. To truly disarm this highly toxic behavior, you must peer directly into the dark, calculating psychology of his emotional extortion. When he brutally cuts off communication, he is categorically not seeking a quiet, mature resolution. He is eagerly sitting in the shadows, waiting patiently for you to inevitably break. He anticipates the frantic double texts, the desperately long paragraphs sent at midnight, and the heartbreaking moment you slowly begin to question your own sanity. He relies entirely on your deeply conditioned fear of abandonment, knowing that if he simply starves you of his basic affection for long enough, your anxiety will forcefully override your logic. This, my dear, is the absolute definition of emotional extortion. He is actively holding your relationship hostage until you are willing to pay the devastating ransom of your own self-respect. He wants you to reach a point of such profound, suffocating discomfort that you are desperately willing to tearfully apologize for perceived transgressions you absolutely did not commit, simply to restore a fragile, artificial peace. He is systematically training you to associate any form of healthy disagreement or boundary setting with the terrifying, agonizing punishment of his complete withdrawal. By successfully forcing you into this desperate state of submission, he ensures that the next time you consider asserting your worth, you will hesitate, utterly terrified of triggering another agonizing freeze. He believes he has perfectly mastered the ultimate psychological control mechanism, wrapping you tightly in a dark web of your own induced anxiety. But his entire fragile strategy relies heavily on one catastrophic assumption, that you will actually play the desperate, anxious role he has so carefully assigned you. He is entirely unprepared for a woman who recognizes the game and simply refuses to play. When a covert manipulator deploys the silent treatment, your immediate, highly conditioned instinct might be to violently fight back, to aggressively demand answers, call him repeatedly, or express your deep, fiery indignation. You must categorically resist this urge, for meeting his calculated silence with your emotional chaos only provides him with the exact validation he seeks. It proves his manipulation is working flawlessly. Instead, a high-value woman elegantly steps entirely out of the arena and enters what I call the sovereign void. You do not reward his childish, toxic tantrum with your premium energy. You simply offer him absolute, deafening peace. Entering the sovereign void requires an immense amount of emotional discipline, but its execution is beautifully, brutally simple. You do not dramatically block him in a sudden fit of rage, nor do you post passive-aggressive quotes on your social media to ensure he knows you are upset. You simply match his silence with your own absolute absence, treating his unprovoked withdrawal not as a terrifying punishment, but as a rather delightful, entirely unbothered vacation for your delicate nervous system. You gracefully redirect every ounce of your magnificent focus back into your own thriving, beautiful empire. While he sits in the dark, smugly checking his mobile phone and eagerly waiting for your inevitable tearful breakdown, you are out drinking expensive wine, laughing beautifully with friends, and completely ignoring his very existence. You become an impenetrable sovereign fortress, entirely immune to his cheap manipulative tactics. By flatly refusing to chase him in the dark, you completely strip him of his perceived power, leaving him entirely alone with his own toxic behavior. And this profound, utterly unbothered detachment is precisely what triggers a rather magnificent, terrifying sequence of events within his own fragile psyche. When your sovereign void remains entirely unbroken, a rather magnificent, deeply satisfying psychological backfire begins to unfold within his mind. The covert manipulator initially assumes your silence is merely a temporary shock, fully expecting your desperate messages to start flooding his phone at any moment. But as the days slowly pass and you offer absolutely nothing but a chilling, unbothered absence, his smug confidence begins to rapidly evaporate. The very silence he meticulously designed to punish you suddenly becomes incredibly, agonizingly deafening to him. He quickly realizes that his ultimate weapon has fundamentally failed, and the suffocating emotional vacuum he intended for you has entirely enveloped him instead. Without your anxious energy to feed his fragile ego, he is left completely alone, forced to confront the embarrassing reality that his childish tantrum had absolutely no effect on your sovereign peace. He begins to frantically check your social media, searching desperately for any subtle sign that you are mourning his absence, only to find you thriving beautifully without him. This is the exact moment absolute panic begins to set in, my dear. He suddenly understands with terrifying clarity that he has severely miscalculated your emotional strength and your inherent value. He recognizes that by attempting to forcefully assert his dominance, he has inadvertently handed you all the power, completely losing his grip on the relationship dynamic. His desperate need to regain control will inevitably force him to break his own silence, bringing us to the final, most crucial stage of the game. When the deafening echo of his own silence becomes entirely too much for his fragile ego to bear, he will inevitably return, attempting to execute the final stage of his manipulation. He will rarely, if ever, offer a genuine, profound apology for his toxic behavior. Instead, he will likely reappear with remarkably casual text, perhaps a lazy, "Hey, stranger," or a completely fabricated excuse about being terribly busy, acting entirely as if the agonizing freeze he subjected you to never actually happened. This is his ultimate test to see if you will instantly drop your boundaries in sheer relief. You must meet this pathetic casual return with what I fondly call the velvet checkmate. You categorically do not greet him with an emotional explosion of anger, nor do you express any profound relief that he has finally returned. You simply respond with a polite, incredibly cold detachment, radiating the energy of a woman who was so spectacularly busy building her own empire that she barely even noticed he was gone. You do not demand a lengthy, dramatic explanation, because asking for an explanation implies that you actually care about his pathetic excuses. Instead, you elegantly enforce a strict, immovable boundary of absolute accountability. Your velvet rope remains firmly closed, and you demonstrate quite clearly that his silent treatment did not break your spirit. It merely locked him entirely out of your premium reality. If he wishes to ever regain a seat at your magnificent table, he must fully understand that his manipulative games are entirely ineffective and utterly unacceptable in your presence. You leave him with the chilling realization that you are perfectly willing to let him walk away forever if he cannot meet your impeccable standards. Ultimately, my dear, a man who weaponizes silence to punish you is not a powerful, mysterious alpha. He is a deeply insecure coward who is entirely terrified of mature communication. Your absolute power lies in your profound ability to let his silence echo into a beautiful, unbothered void. Now, I have a rather vital question for you. What is the absolute most pathetic, casual text message a man has ever sent you to break the ice after giving you the silent treatment? Expose his cowardly tactics in the comments below. I always read every single one. If you are entirely ready to stop tolerating emotional manipulation and truly master the unspoken dynamics of high-value psychology, ensure you subscribe to Destiny's Decree and firmly ring the notification bell. Until next time, keep your boundaries strict and your peace completely sovereign.